Welcome. So, this is the first Sunday of the month at Interfaith Community Sanctuary. I just wanted you all to know that I knew that too. This is our Sunday of honoring the guest, and our guests today are Timothy Kinsella, who is well known to many in the congregation, and our friend Richard Russell. I'll introduce them more later. But this tradition of inviting people in to share from their tradition and their perspective on the first Sunday of the month has been, actually predates this congregation. It's the oldest practice that we have. So I like to mention that because I'm appreciative of the fact that one of our foundational practice is based on a sense of hospitality and openness to learning. So that was time and place. Let's invite in the ancestors, which is something else that we do at every service. And so I'd like us to just feel your body in space. We're all sitting here on the earth, we're standing here on the earth, and we're in the gravitational field of the earth, which we forget because our bodies are perfectly designed to be in this gravitational field. It's so it supports us. It supports our physical being and who we are. So let's just feel that for a moment. Be aware of your spine. We are upright creatures. Feel the energy of the breath coming in and out of the heart space. And into this heart space, we invite our ancestors, all who have come before us, all who have developed and transmitted a way of being human, a way of working with each other and all of the other creatures on this planet for millennia. What we have received is a distillation and a refinement of all of these living experiences. And this is what we seek to embody and transmit to the future. So let's just feel ourselves in the middle, in the central point of this lineage. And while we are acknowledging and inviting in our ancestors, I also want to acknowledge that we are gathering physically on unceded land of the Duwamish tribe. We may wonder why we do this acknowledgement at every gathering, and what does it mean that we are on the unceded land of the Duwamish tribe? I don't know what that means, but we say it so we can all individually figure out what that feels like and what that means. There's a what did James Baldwin say? Famous quote: "You can't change everything that is faced, but nothing can be changed without facing it." So that's really what we're doing when we do that acknowledgement. We're not trying to get ourselves off the hook or anything. We are just saying this is a foundational reality of our lives, and saying, and it's an open inquiry to feel what that means to us in how we operate our lives. Okay, I'd like to pass the mic over to our friend Chris for an offering for the Divine Feminine.
Thank you, Michael. I'm again honored and humbled to acknowledge the Divine Feminine in our space. And I thought about this and realized that June, the month of June, which we're in right now, was originally named for the goddess Juno, the Queen of Heaven. In the Roman pantheon, she was the wife of Jupiter. In the Greek mythology, she would have been Hera. But I found this piece for Juno as whispered by a citizen of Rome, and I hope that you find some solace in it. Queen of heaven, queen of the gods, queen of the mothers, under whose dominion all things are, at whose will the earth revolves and the stars move, whose breath gives life to all things, who leads the bride to marriage, who brings forth new citizens, who gives light to mortals, whose power, whose divinity, whose majesty you have alone. Your will marks all things, you have the right to command. With your nod, the walls spring up and the battlements grow strong. Your sacred laws supply war and peace. You anoint the times of solemn festivals and keep the hours of prayer and sacrifice. You govern the laws of progress and order, recurring birth. Mighty in power, you guide the affairs of the world according to your will. O most gracious Queen of Heaven, help and protect us. Blessed be.
I can't give it to you until I introduce you. So, this is Timothy Kinsella, one of a very closely held musician in our community and other communities around. He is an ethnomusicologist, a master musician of the Ottoman classical tradition. And also a musician with a wide-ranging intelligence and curiosity about how music works and how reality works and how those intersect. And he will share some of that with us today, God willing. And I'm going to have you introduce Richard.
No pressure. Greetings. Thank you for the flattering remarks. And I'm pleased to welcome Richard Russell in our presence today, a master musician in the North Indian tradition, playing this amazing instrument called sarod, and harmonium and singing. And he's devoted many, many years of his life to an intense, deep study of this Indian tradition. And we're also happy to announce that he and his band, all master musicians, will be here for a concert on June 17th, yes, right here. And we invite all of you. I included a flyer in the service program today, and so I will hold forth with a few remarks about music, but then turn it over to Richard, who will deliver the music, which is worth infinitely more than any words I might say. So I looked on the service announcement at the sanctuary website for what the theme was, and it read, "Music to clear the mind." And I thought, that is a big topic. And then I thought a little more about it and realized we don't even have adequate descriptions for either of those terms, although many of us undoubtedly think we know what mind is and what music is, but I like to prod and poke and interrogate these terms and start to tear them apart, and then we see that pretty much any term we try to put on something just fractures and unravels into a matrix of contending or complementary meanings, a swarm of restless signifiers in search of a signified. So maybe we think of the mind as some sort of a neurobiological computer, a consciousness inhabiting our skulls mostly, somebody in the driver's seat who is issuing the software for the hardware of our biological mechanism. That's partially true, but that immediately throws us into a duality of mind and body, or too often mind versus body. We get into the whole Cartesian dualistic mind-body split. And unfortunately, in many religious and philosophical systems, the body is thought of something primitive to be overcome, this unruly mechanism full of powerful urges that distract us somehow from the spiritual, which is another term I dislike intensely because it beggars description. And here's just one aside, like anytime you have one of these dualistic sets of terms, mind, body, good, evil, man, woman, almost invariably the first term reveals the inherent bias. So the first term is always privileged in the conception of these things, which is something to watch out for. And then likewise for music, what is music? We don't know. The dictionary definitions for music say something about organized sound, or I pulled one out here. It says, vocal or instrumental sounds, or both, combined in such a way as to produce beauty. What's that? Of form, harmony, and expression of emotion. Okay, well, that doesn't tell us much. Music essentially is a judgment, wholly subjective. We decide somehow what music is or what music isn't, and here's another dichotomy, music / noise. At some stage, something is clearly music, and then on the other side you have noise, but the interzone between the two is a contentious zone and culturally determined, personally, subjectively determined. And then we think of, okay, we know what music is, and it's produced by specially trained, specialized individuals who are playing clearly defined musical instruments. Well, I can tear that apart too. I contend that you can get just as much music out of a stone as you can out of any instrument that you may purchase in Guitar Center or someplace like that. Little rock music. At one time I was invited here, we had actually a blanket or sheet full of natural objects and trash, and people from the congregation came up and manipulated these objects in any way they saw fit, and we created a very interesting, I would even say beautiful sound matrix. And in the words of one rascal who I will not identify, he said, "Yep, they went at it like a bunch of kindergartners on crack." This is very liberating. And yeah, here's an object. It looks like a flute. You might call it a musical instrument. But in the tradition where this object emerges from, originally, and in the language, it was called hoki, which means something like a spiritual tool. So this instrument, the shakuhachi, was not conceived of in the culture as a musical instrument that would give performances. You meditate when you play this flute, and if somebody happens to be listening to what you're doing, they're not listening to a musical performance, they're listening to your meditation. And also, I would say, participating in that by virtue of their presence in the space. And years ago, I don't remember if it was the same occasion as the sound object experiment, but I came here and talked about Nada Brahma, the Vedic idea of the world as sound, and certainly an idea with which Richard is intimately familiar. And in a nutshell, that maintains that everything is a vibration. You, me, the world, everything in it, God. It's just energy in motion. And if we speak of spiritual realities, instead of using the terms higher and lower, it might be more accurate to talk in terms of faster and slower. Faster vibrations turn into light. Some vibrations manifest as sound. Other vibrations manifest as apparently solid objects. They're just moving a lot slower. But music, however we conceive of it and practice it, affects us on many levels. And within spiritual traditions of very many kinds, it's often thought of as a means by which we may calm or still the mind, move into a meditative state, condition us to experience mystical states of non-ordinary reality. And there's no one definition of that either. It's a spectrum between the placid and the still, all the way to the frenzied and the ecstatic. And it works out differently in different traditions, and different individuals are attuned differently. For some people, the idea of meditative music is just long tones on bells or chimes, maybe with some nature sounds filtering in, or stringed instruments, drones, native flutes, some kind of chanting or shamanic drumming, which if you do it at a certain tempo, enables the shaman to ride into the other world, the underworld. Or even for some people, a cloud of new age synthesizer mist, just tones, and music that doesn't necessarily draw attention to itself, music we can breathe into, breathe with, rhythms that affect our brainwave states, regulate our biorhythms, move us into a state of entrainment, which is a very important concept. Basically, the tendency of different periodic cycles to synchronize with each other, and that works out on many levels in music, in reality. Think of women who live together or are close friends. Very often their biological monthly cycles will synchronize, or old-fashioned clocks that had a mechanism. If you put enough of them in a room, gradually they would all synchronize together. And musically, it also works out between musicians. Our rhythms become entrained. We synchronize with one another. And also, this is important, the energy of the room, of the space, the environment, and the individuals, the creatures within it, also may become entrained. And this is one reason why, for example, concerts can be such a powerful experience, because you have a room full of people that are all at some level hooking up in this rhythm and connecting to what's happening in the music and the musicians. So there's a full spectrum of music that can be used profitably to move us into more receptive, altered states. And I'll make one more point before we play a little music, but one of the most important objectives of any of these expressions of music used for meditation or spiritual attunement, let's say, is to still or sublimate the constant internal dialogue that most of us are always having in our heads. Conversations, different voices talking, some contradicting, some agreeing. I've always wondered, like in my brain, when you get one of these fantastic conversations going on, there's 3 or 4 different voices. Who are those people? And who is it that's like listening to all of them? Is it me? But that kind of thing can be an obstacle to spiritual work. And so in many, many traditions, one of the objectives is to still, or at least sublimate, this constant internal dialogue, because otherwise the doors of perception remain closed. And I'm referring, of course, to William Blake. If the doors of perception were cleansed, everything would appear to man, to humans, as it is, infinite. I'd like to do a little bit of an improvisation here, and with the recognition that it's all of us participating in this to some level. Improvisation is a wonderful musical means for entering the immediacy of the present moment, Because although in different traditions there are different parameters of improvisation, at some level it's exciting because it's fresh and we don't know what will happen when we start. I will play a taksim in the Ottoman Turkish tradition, which means I will work with a melodic mode, and my challenge is at once to present enough material to establish, to create an identity for that mode or maqam, and also to do something new with it at the same time. So you're walking a tightrope. And yeah. I hesitate to speak. Music, if it's manifested appropriately, it creates an aura, a spell. And I've consistently noticed the tendency, like immediately upon conclusion of a piece of music, that spell is often disrupted, either by applause or somebody feeling like they have to say something about the music. When in my own, personally ordered universe, many musical performances, at the end, everybody would just depart in silence, or something close to it. I wanted to speak about silence. Silence does not really exist. You can get more and more quiet, but if you define silence as the absence of sound, You'll never, ever get there, even if you're in an anechoic chamber that's totally insulated. John Cage found this out. He locked himself inside an experimental airtight anechoic chamber and found out that in that environment he could hear the activity of his nerves, the electronic pulses and the blood pulsing through his veins. I mean, like, so you can't really manifest total silence. But as musicians, silence is an important part of our palette. And it's often the case that what you don't play is as or more important than what you do play. The Japanese, again, have a word for this. It's called ma. And that's a particular kind of silence that becomes as much a part of the musical composition as any notes that are played. And I think I would just like to speak briefly about how music is used in the spiritual tradition to which I am currently attached, which is Mevlevi Sufism, and the relationship of music to those Sufi practices is inseparable. You cannot conceive of something called Mevlevi Sufism outside of music. It's such an important part. And so to still this ego chatter, which sometimes in Sufism is referred to as nafs, or in Buddhism, you want to still the monkey mind. And it's one of the roles that music plays in Sufism. So the Neizen, or the person who plays this instrument, which is called ney, it's just a hollow reed, we have to try to make ourselves as hollow as this reed, so that the breath of the divine might move through us and manifest as sound. And many cosmological conceptions, the world, the manifest world, is conceived of as sound. In Sufism, in Islam, Allah breathes the manifested world into apparent existence with the syllable hu, hu. And it turns out that if you want to play this instrument, that's exactly how you have to position your lips and mouth. And you're like breathing hu down this empty tube. And the semizans, or the whirling dervishes, who turn to this music are essentially riding on the music in a similar way to the shaman who's riding on his or her drum into the other world. And hopefully the music is helping them extinguish some of these spurious conversations and dialogues and perceptions, and enabling direct, immediate perception of the world, of the great animate everything, as Sophie Strand has named it. And in this state, you can feel your interconnection to the field, the matrix, sustaining it all. And for the dervishes, you'll find, like, when you're doing this turning, if you try and focus on any one thing, you will wipe out and fall in a vertiginous, chaotic heap. You have to not focus on any one thing, and then this greater awareness maybe we can speak about this a little later in terms of our own personal experiences with music, but as musicians, it's advantageous to still those inner voices, especially the egoic voices, such that, all right, here's a question. Are we playing music, or is music playing us? Personal view. As musicians, the best that we can do is to create the conditions through our practice, through our study, through our love and dedication to music, that we may become vessels through which music may choose to manifest. And it doesn't always happen. But I would like to turn the forum over to our friend Richard, who has brought several of his instruments and is a master of inducing these states.
Well, good morning, and thank you for the invitation. First from Timothy and also from Karen. And I am excited to share music with you guys, not just today, but in the future as well. I'm not sure how much to add to my friend's very nuanced expressions here, other than to possibly narrow down on the specific tradition and discipline that I was entrained in, as you say. And just to capsulate it, because it's much too long of a discourse for what we want to do this morning, there's a concept in the East where practices are meant to refine perception, and then you use the tool of perception to enhance the nature of your being. And this is how I talk. I don't have notes. I'm a professional improviser, so I'll just go with what comes to me. But the idea there, and it's universal, it's in all kinds of music. This instrument is popular in North India, but it's from Persia. It's from a rabab. You know, all these roads come together in the same way that the concept of the Interfaith Church is acknowledging that all these paths come together. And the important thing is, in my experience, as a student and then a aspiring professional, and I guess I've arrived, not sure where, but I guess the most important thing that I keep trying to learn from my guru, who was a pretty famous man, Ali Akbar Khan Sahib was his name, Ravi Shankar was his brother-in-law. They both studied with his father, and they're the ones who brought this music in the exciting duet style into Europe and then into America. And my Guruji, Khan Sahib, we call him, it's just an honorific. He chose to teach rather than do film scores and produce a lot of music and play and concert. He did all those things, but he really chose to teach. And the reason is because his father bequeathed this incredible bounty of profound music to him. And it's primarily an oral tradition, although I'm a musician with the skill to notate, and I do that with skill and determination, trying to capture music. But the essence of Indian music is conveyed in person. You know, you have to be there. It's called darshan, where you have the presence, the literal visual presence of the teacher. And my first darshans were, where can I hide? I'm in a room that not too much bigger than this, and Ali Akbar Khan, one of the greatest musicians of the century, is sitting on the stage, and I'm brand new, and I'm already trained in music. I'm a reasonably skilled piano player, improviser, and such. But when I met this music, I realized what a small box I live in as a artist, and kind of analogy for so many things we discover in life when we meet someone or a teaching or some process that just blows wide, changes from a telephoto to a wide-angle lens, the way we see our lives and the world around us. So that's what occurred when I met my Guruji. And I basically said, okay, everything else is out. I'm not playing piano. I'm going to play his instrument because that's the best way to learn what he's doing, or so I thought. So that's what I did. And the setting in which you experience music at the Ali Akbar College of Music in San Rafael, California. Yes, that's a plug. Tell your friends if they want to learn Indian classical music, that's the place to go in America. But the experience there is anybody can walk in the door, just like this lovely house. There is no prerequisite. Musically, you don't show that you already have a bachelor's degree so that you can play an intermediate class. It's all irrelevant to master musicians. All they're looking for is a combination of things, and probably the most important one is humility. And they demonstrate that for you. At least my teacher did. It's like humble yourself, surrender yourself to these profound and vast traditions, and then the next step, of course, is patience, because you can't just. If I had a quarter for every time a guitar player came up to me and said, "Could you show me that raga scale?" I'd be a rich man. But this is not something that you can buy like fast food, or Google, or just ask a friend to, send you a couple of notes. This is a vast commitment of time, energy, and effort. So that ends up being the last part of that triumvirate, that you need humility, and you need patience, and then of course you need commitment. But that's universal, right? For accomplishing anything in our lives, we need those things. So, especially when I have such a nuanced academic mind next to me, if I can stop talking, that's just fine with me. So one of the basics of Indian music is singing. I don't care, they don't care what you play. You can be the greatest sarod player, sitar player on the planet. If you don't come to vocal class, you're out. So that's the most beautiful thing about the training. Everyone sings, everyone finds their voice, and everyone refines their voice through practice and certain techniques. And one of those techniques is just to sing sa, right? And it's like Western music has do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do. Indian music has sa, re, ga, ma, pa, da, ni, sa. Sa, re, ga, ma, pa, da, ni, sa. Sa, ni, da, ba, ma, da, re, sa. So what Kansal would say is, how do you know your friends, right? Because you recognize them. I finally met Karen, so now I'm going to recognize her. And some of your faces are becoming familiar. I can catch Tim or Michael across the room now. So the idea is, you know your friends because you spend time with them, right? And you see what they present to you, not only how they look, but the energy they present to you. So you know your friends because you spend time with them. So what do you have to do with these notes? Spend time with them. So the first thing you get trained in is singing sa. So we're just going to do a little exercise in singing Sa, because we don't have to worry about what range your voice is in, because we're only singing this one note. And the word is Sa, so it becomes Ah, which is very, very useful for carrying a tone. So just give it a try, and it's not a chorus. We're not trying to hire you up for anything, so just do it, and come with me on a little sonic journey into one tone. Sa. And then just repeat it. Sa. Now just you. So imagine a room full of, 20, maybe 25 people, and they're all singing this note for 15 minutes. And you get this combination of physical vibration from the note itself, and then you also get the prana, the breath, that you're putting into that note, and you're pretty high, as you should be, in relation to those energies, right? You're connecting with vibration, alluded to by Timothy in his little discourse about the secrets of music. It's organized vibration. That's the way I look at it. So what the Indian tradition did in ancient times was it took this concept. They didn't have these things. These were made in Europe, by the way, and taken to India by the British so they could teach them how to sing "A Mighty Fortress Is Our God." and when they finally kicked the British out, the Indians said, "But you know what? I don't mind if you leave that box." And they did. And it's now a ubiquitous Indian instrument, wonderful for supporting vocals, and also very easy to play if it's easier to teach keyboard than that 25 string challenge. So it's become very popular in Indian. You see Indians, Pakistani singers, they all use harmoniums. But originally built and designed in France, and then full-size organ, but made into a small box so they could send it to India, which it never left. So what the sages and the rishis, the holy people of India discovered was that if you get inside a vibration, that it's calming, it's healing, and it's peaceful. So they not only developed a very refined art music, but they have a very simple music too, known as mantra or kirtan. And they're not the same, but they're related. So what we're going to do now is we're going to do a mantra, and it has a specific meaning and to it, and also a specific melody. So you may not catch the melody, but I want you to feel the meaning of it. And this is, by the way, a mantra that was made even more popular by Tina Turner. So I'd like to dedicate it to her. Many of you may know she had, Buddhist aspect to her life. And she made a recording of this, but I have my own version. The mantra is called a mantra for blessing, and the words are in your paper, if you would look at it. Because even if you can't sing it with me, it's more of a recitation I'm going to do. If you can't sing it with me, I want you to feel it, right? So Sarve Sham Swastir Bhavatu. May all be well. Sarvesham Shantir Bhavatu. May all be at peace. Sarvesham Muktir Bhavatu. May all be free. Sarvesham Purnam Bhavatu. May all be whole. Sarvesham Mangalam Bhavatu. May all be content. And then when I finish the chant, together we'll chant Om Shanti 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 3 times. So you can close your eyes and absorb this, look at the words. You can also try to sing along if you like. And here comes that saw that we all just learned. Sa. Sing sa. Swasti You hold that sa for me, it'd be lovely. Sa. Together. Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. major scale because you hear that pitch? Not sure where it's coming from, but it's a shudga. And naturally is in the room. So these mantras are so, they pull you inside, right? Because what does mantra mean? It means man is mind, and mantra means to still the mind. This is a universal theme in meditation or any tradition where we're trying to, seek the messages and the information and the both somatic and divine that are inside ourselves. So we're not looking outside. We're looking inside ourselves in the same way that we want to have humility, patience, and persistence in clarifying this vessel that we carry ourselves in, our own souls and consciousness, so that when we interact with the world, whether it's strangers or somebody who's become a friend, somebody who's already a beloved, maybe even somebody we're not real comfortable around, the quieter we are inside, the greater chance we have of presenting the world with a palette of equanimity, acceptance, grace, and love. What else could we possibly need? So the idea with this morning's program was to present a variety of things. So we're going to play I understand you folks have some experience with kirtan. You've had some people do kirtan here before. So kirtan is a traditional chant, and it has a really interesting history, and I won't go into length, but it originated with the Sikh tradition, known as Shabad Kirtan. And if you're aware of the philosophy of the Sikhs, the reason why they all wear the pugri, the headgear that they wear, is to make everyone equal, right? And it's one of the most appealing religions of Southeast Asia to me, because there's a sense of equality, and it's not hierarchical, in the way that Hinduism can be, and other religions as well. And it has a certain just balance to it. And I've had a wonderful relationship with my Sikh friends, played in their gurdwaras many times. But I'm going to do what we would call a traditional Hindu chant, and we're going to sing to Lord Ram, who is an avatar, meaning that a saintly or godlike figure who manifests in physical form. And the reason I like to sing to Ram is because Ram needs more help than Sita. We're talking about the divine feminine. It's one of your themes in this congregation, which I think is wonderful. And there's no doubt that if women were running the world, we would be in a much better place. It's just a fact. So I like to sing to Ram because I want to emphasize to my fellow men, not my fellow humans, but specifically my fellow men, that there are better ways to be. There are ways to improve how we handle ourselves in the world. And not necessarily us individually, although each one of us has room for that, but just the men folk, right, who run governments and this, that, and the other, could use some inspiration from a figure like Ram, who is considered a perfect embodiment of balance and equanimity, fairness, courage, and defense of what is good and right. So no difficulty with the words on this kirtan. Shri Ram, Jai Ram, Jai Jai Ram. So basically it's an honorific Shri. I honor Lord Ram. I celebrate Lord Ram. May his energy, be victorious. Jaya can be interpreted as victory. I sing and you sing. One more time. Jai One last time from you. Shri Ram, Jai Ram, Jai Jai Ram.
There was a bit of the entrainment of which I spoke. As we all breathed and moved together into the sound.
You guys are good. I want to come here and do a kirtan. I only have a reaction to one thing that my friend Timothy said this morning in reference to me. And that is master, right? Master is this complicated word that I'm not sure that the Western mind has quite wrapped its mind around it yet. But I have spent my 10,000 hours, but that doesn't guarantee anything. The one thing that I learned from my teacher was, especially with this instrument, the sarod, never stop paying attention. Don't pause your awareness for even a microsecond, or your pitch and your rhythm are gone. This was particularly true for him. Some of the greatest tabla players, drummers in the world accompanied him, and they were all scared to death. They got comfortable eventually, but the man was a genius with rhythm and melody and intonation. So what you see from me is that mote of dust in the sunlight that we talk about, that tiny thing that's the essence of everything, but still very tiny. So I am just a piece of wood shaving that was carved off of his amazing genius and model. So when you have a big Naha guru like I had, you don't banter around with calling yourself a master. You can't, because you know that you're trying to live up and follow the path that you learned from. So you go, no, we don't use that word. What we use is a dedicated disciple, a skilled musician, and someone who's committed to supporting and spreading the music as a teacher, of which I'm also. So those are the key ingredients to satisfaction as an artist when you're in a tradition that is so complicated and deep. I call some of my Indian friends maestros because they're just so good. They're just so good. They've been playing since they were 4 years old. But even them, that are highly recognized, received, awards from the government and this, that, and the other, degrees, honoraries, et cetera, the best of them don't want to be called masters. Okay.
I'm glad that you brought up humility as a prerequisite for musicianship, and Now, speaking now from personal experience, musicians can have these peak experiences of transcendence even as we're playing. And a lot of that is dependent upon the matrix of everything that's happening in that moment. The room, the energy of the room, the way the sound is coalescing, the energy of the people, because it's a feedback loop, and it's not just a projection from the stage out onto a passive audience, ideally, but it's this this exchange of energy. And some nights, and now I'm hearkening back to my rock and roll days, 2/3 of the way into the evening, everything would just come into laser focus, and you could feel the energy. The people were with you, they were moving with you. The sounds of your instruments were perfectly dialed in. The resonance of the room would be reinforcing and supporting what you were doing, and everything's just flying. And I'm up there playing a guitar solo, and my feedback tones are perfect. Everything's perfect.
Turn it down.
And then
Down.
at one...
Okay, media will play more softly.
Be quiet, Siri. You could turn that mic off if you want. Something was feeding back. I'm not sure if it was that.
So you're in this state and everything is just happening. You're not doing it, it's doing you, it's coming out. But then the instant you have this thought, it creeps in, it's like, wow, that's pretty cool.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but this is the mic that's too hot. You need to bring the mixer down a little bit.
That's channel 3.
Yeah. Okay. Good. Sorry.
Yeah, so the instant some thought bubbles up like, oh my God, that was cool. You're totally shredding the solo. And the instant, the nanosecond that happens, it's gone completely. And you have to start from scratch to hopefully resurrect whatever it was that was happening. So on the one hand, musicians need to have a strong ego in order to just get up and do what we do in front of people. And certainly when we're beholden to traditions that are marked by deep complexity and tradition, and on the other hand, you have to be completely self-effacing and get out of the way. So it's a constant dance.
Keep going. I'm tuning.
And I love this instrument that Richard plays called the sorod. In my own colloquial English, I call it the Indian slide guitar. It's completely fretless. And it's equipped with a set of resonating strings that respond to sympathetic vibrations. So if he hits a particular note, the resonating strings will begin to vibrate in a similar way that we were singing Sa together. And so it creates this deep, rich matrix of sound to which we may choose to surrender, which is one way of listening deeply, is to give yourself over to the sound and all the sounds that are happening around us. And when we do this, we might expand our perceptual awareness much farther. Like, I noticed at the end of the kirtan, or the chant, when we stopped, there was this delicious silence. But all the sounds that were around us were suddenly much more present and alive. and we weren't trying to shut them out or exclude them from our field of sonic awareness. So yeah, what I'm proposing is an active listening rather than a passive hearing.
Yeah, so the Sarod, how many people have seen one of these before? Okay, so we've got some awareness. 25 strings. 15 of them are sympathetic, as he was describing. So when I play that note, that one rings. So one thing Sarod does not need is reverb. It's built in. And indeed it's fretless, so which is a lovely double-edged sword where you can have this huge range of expression and a great ease of falling off the log, as they say. But without some ability to create microtones, what we call shrutis in Indian music, it's literally impossible to recreate the music without that ability. So that's why voice is so primary, because of course voice can be completely controlled that way. And then instruments like violin or sarangi or bansuri flute, which is similar to his bamboo flutes, you know, and you've heard him bend pitches on his flute, same thing. And you know, with Sarod, with sitar, you have frets, so you have a road map for the scale, but you can pull the string over the frets to get these beautiful ornamental sounds. And on Sarod, you just slide. So rather than talk about it, I'll demonstrate. I'm going to play a short composition called Prema, meaning divine love. And the way I compose music, which is also how I compose music for my band that's going to be playing a concert here in a couple of weeks, is I basically create little raga vignettes, you know, from my knowledge of ragas, but I'm also a composer in my own right, so I create some of my own energy. And our band is very, you know, we have written music, there's music stands on stage and stuff, but everybody who plays is capable of being a creative, improvisational type musician. That's very important. So we'll do a little bit of that. And then just one thing I wanted to announce, since I have the floor for a second more, I am in search of a couple of volunteers who will be compensated with free tickets, but I need a couple of people to handle the door on June 17th. That's a Saturday, and if anyone here or anyone knows anyone in the congregation that might be inclined to do that, it's not a hard job, you just take checks or cash, but we are going to have a PayPal function where people can send a PayPal payment as well. So if anybody has ideas, would like to volunteer, think about that. I'd like 2 volunteers. I'm going to offer each one of them 2 free tickets so that, of course, they can attend, but also they can invite a friend for free as well, because it is a job and you should be compensated. Prema is built, the composition is built on Rag Mishra Kafi, which is common in springtime. It's a romantic raga, if you will, but it has the nuance of Shringara, which is the mood of romantic love, but also there is almost no time that Indian music is not also talking about divine love. So we'll see if we can evoke both those a little bit. Hear that ring?
I can't thank you all enough. That was really beautiful. Thank you. In the Sufi tradition, one thing that is paid great attention is moments of transition, places of threshold between one world and the next, between one moment and the next. Timothy mentioned before the thing that happens often after a musical performance and the energy gets broken very quickly by applause or whatever. But mostly just because of our general discomfort with non-ordinary states, so we have to get things back to normal really quickly. So I just like us to just pause for a moment and notice where we're at right now, because we're about to move into housekeeping and announcements, and just take stock of where you're at right now, and carry it into the next place. So we're running later than normal, so I'm going to curtail announcements, except to point out again June 17th, concert with Richard and friends, including also our friend Steve Metcalf, who many people here have known for a very long time. And immediately following this gathering, which is why I'm kind of curtailing the rest of the announcements, we have a guiding council meeting. Usually starts around 12:45. You're in charge, right? No? Oh, George is in charge. So about 12:45, downstairs, and there's food. So come on down and eat and participate in non-hierarchical governance. How often do you get to do it? Moving on to the next phase, sharing our wealth. I'm going to pass a plate in the traditional manner. But I also want to point out that we have a new feature here. There's a Q code thing you can just point your phone at and put it on your credit card. Right there in the program. Here we are in the 21st century. Yeah, we're being dragged. You know, it gets comfy after a while being dragged. You just kind of relax into it. And that's it. Normally we would have a period of just sharing our hearts and being with this, but since we do have a governance meeting coming up momentarily, we're gonna leap over that. But maybe we could form a circle and have a closing blessing.